So the other day, YouTube told me that it was my anniversary. It doesn't quite feel right because I haven't really been posting anything, but it really made me reflect on my filmmaking journey so far. So I thought it would be good to share a few things I've learned the hard way over the last couple of years becoming a filmmaker. So here are 6 things that I learned trying to become a freelance filmmaker. Number 1, information is everywhere, but experience is self-generated. I didn't go to film school and I didn't have the opportunity to learn a lot of things with other people around. I learned kind of in a vacuum through YouTube videos, tutorials, classes online, books. And even though all of that stuff was really, really helpful to read about and learn about in theory, the one thing that has been way more valuable for me was actually getting on set and starting off as a PA and like figuring out how things work, getting my hands on stands and gear, and really just going out and doing it. And I think any opportunity you have to make a film or be a part of making a film, I think you should take it. If you are starting out in the industry and you're like, oh, I need a camera, I need this and this and this, maybe you can't learn everything about cameras right now, but you can take your phone and shoot something and you can learn about directing. You can learn about blocking. You don't need a fancy light to figure out how light wraps around people's faces. You know what I mean? Like I'm using an IKEA lamp right now and you can see based on where it is, like where the light falls on my face. And this was a choice. Like I made that choice. I know it's a weird choice, but ultimately there are things you can figure out without specific gear, and there are things you can figure out that are universal, like regardless of what gear you're working with. Maybe the diffusion is different for this light, for example, but the direction of the light is not going to change because it's a different light. You know, it'll change based on where the light is pointed and if it's bouncing off of something or if it's direct. Like that kind of stuff you can learn with what's in your house. Same thing with blocking. Like if you have a phone or some kind of thing that can capture an image, then you can figure out how a frame should look. This kind of leads into my second point, which is having gear helps. So you should try to get your hands on something. I know I just said you don't need like a camera, you don't need real lights, but you need a camera, you need a light. And, you know, like I said, your phone is good enough to figure out blocking, but it's not good enough to figure out how to work an ARRI Alexa or how to work a Sony Venice or any other camera that you might eventually hope to use. So getting on a set that has more people involved, that has more things you can get experience with, is going to be key to like improve your knowledge. Now, I'm not saying you should go out and buy a bunch of stuff. I don't think like spending your own money to buy gear is super important, especially at an early stage, but I am saying you need to get out and volunteer or ask to be a part of sets, small sets, student sets, whatever, in a capacity that gets your hands on the things you want to work with. If you want to be a part of a camera team, if you want to be a camera operator, a DP, then like find some students making a film and ask to, you know, be second AC, like second assistant camera, and like use a slate, get your hands on a camera, like figure out how things plug in, what a monitor does, what a follow focus does, like all these things. Because you can watch all the videos you want forever, but once your hands are on something, it's very different. Or, you know, if you have a couple of friends who all want to learn about cameras, maybe you can pull someone together and go to a rental house and rent a camera for a weekend, and maybe you can spend the weekend shooting your own videos or films and get the chance to actually work with the camera and make mistakes and have a good time. Because yeah, cameras can be expensive to rent, but you don't have to start at the top. You can start with like a Blackmagic pocket camera and figure out, you know, what really is ISO, what really is false color, all these kinds of things. Like how do you focus? Like you can start small and you can expand. And the reality is that like we're all constantly learning new technology. I don't think there's a single person who knows every single bit of gear that exists, except for maybe Gerald Undone. But the reality is you're not going to get a chance to play with everything all the time, and even the people at the highest levels don't. But getting familiar with a set of tools is super essential for anybody who wants to jump into filmmaking. Just know what tools you're looking to use and start trying to use them. Okay, rule number 3 is probably the most important rule, and it is make friends. It's really easy to think you're going to be a one-mule band and you know, make films start to finish by yourself, but the reality is that if you want to make things of a certain caliber, of a certain level, you're going to need other people. And if you're going to work with other people, you better be really good to work with. While I do think it's really important to know as many aspects of filmmaking and, you know, pre-production, production, and post-production as possible. I think ultimately, like, you have to also be able to rely on people to do the work that they do. So, for example, I am a cinematographer. I also write and direct and edit, but whenever I can, I don't do those things. You know, I do have films that I write that I want to make, and I'll direct them. But the reality is that if I don't have to do certain elements, I'm going to try not to do them, because I know that by splitting my focus, I'm going to make something that's less good. If I can ask somebody to come on set and do production design and give them an outline, you know, before we need to go to camera, then I don't need to think about finding props. I don't need to think about what things are going to look like. I've put my trust into somebody else who has that capability and who knows that better than me to execute the vision that I have. And ultimately that lets me focus on directing or cinematography much more. And then I can just think about that one thing, which is great. And you know, making friends is not just because making films with friends is more fun, because it is, but it's also because as you progress through the career, and the reality is that people want to work with people who are going to drain them on set. People want to work with people they have fun with. And the truth is that 9 times out of 10, the work you want to be doing isn't going to show up on a job posting or a Facebook group. It's going to show up as a message from a friend or a message from an acquaintance who remembers you as being somebody pleasant to work with and who uses a camera or can edit really well or can do something. But honestly, being a good person and making friends is going to get you more work than answering any kind of ad or scouring any kind of forum, because the people doing like big work are not posting about it. They're not posting job postings unless they're desperate. They're usually asking their friends or asking other people they know for their friends. So you want to be the kind of person that other people will gladly say your name when this kind of role is suggested. And you do that by showing up to free gigs and going to network events and just having a good time and being pleasant, you know, having good work ethic. I have heard of people who are less skilled being hired because they're more fun to work with, and I think like ultimately, yeah, that's the case, especially if you're spending multiple days with the same person for 10, 12, 15 hours a day. You want to have somebody next to you that you're comfortable talking to. And also keep in mind that if you're going to one of these sets, if you're landing one of these jobs, you want to make sure that you're talking to these people as people. Like, don't come looking for a handout. Every step in your career, there's going to be someone 1 or 2 steps below that is looking for a handout. They're kind of focused on their own gain. And the people that stand out are the ones that are more helpful, the ones that are fun to be around, and they're not just looking for their own personal gain. You will benefit from making genuine connections. Number 4 is keep practicing. I like to think that I know what I'm doing. I'm at a point where I'm very comfortable with my capabilities and my camera's capabilities, but I try to remind myself that there's a bunch of situations I haven't been in yet, like certain blocking and lighting situations, environmental situations, and this really helps me to stay in a mindset of like trying to absorb more information. When I show up on a set or when I show up to networking events and I meet other cinematographers or camera people, in general, anybody on set, I do my best to try to listen to people that I meet so that I can learn something. Because the reality is that I only know a fraction of the things there are to know about cinematography, and I will never learn all of it, and that's kind of exciting. I'm excited to spend time learning things I don't know, and I think that's an important attitude to have. You don't want to be the know-it-all on set, and nobody wants to be around a know-it-all on set. Number 5 is show off. What I mean by that is, like, you can make the coolest thing you've ever made in your life, but if you don't talk about it, nobody else will. The reality is that as a freelancer or a creative person, you need an online presence and you need to have a way to showcase the things you're doing. Everybody's so bombarded by information online that people forget that other people exist really quickly and really easily. You want to be able to share your work for 2 reasons. To reach people who connect with your work and who have like an emotional response or, you know, are fans of your work. And the other reason, to remind people that you might want to work with that you exist. It is kind of weird to think about it, and like it is weird to say that you need to post regularly and make digital content like on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or whatever. But in truth, we just compartmentalize a lot of information, so having someone remind you that they exist is super important. And finally, number 6 is creating boundaries with clients. This past year, I've done a few gigs that were a little rough, and it's because I was in a position where I needed work, and it made me compromise on a few of my boundaries. And as a result, I had a much worse time than I could have if I just stayed firm or even didn't take the job. I had a contract that was supposed to last 2 weeks, and it ended up taking over a month. And because I made those compromises, it didn't end up being worth it financially or time-wise or emotionally. I'm finding that if I consistently take jobs because I need them I'm putting myself in worse and worse positions, and I'm taking away power and control from my own work and giving it to people who don't value my work as much. So this was a hard lesson to learn, to not compromise on my boundaries with clients, to make sure that I follow my own systems and prerequisites for, how money is handled, what are deliverables, and what is expectations. And ever since this harsh reminder, I've had a lot better work come my way, and I've had to pass on a few jobs that I feel didn't fit my needs or my boundaries, and I don't regret it. Like the work and money that I lose out on by saying no to some jobs that don't respect me and my time properly has left me with like a better disposition and like personal comfort. Like I feel better that I didn't do that job. So that's pretty much it. Those are my main takeaways from the past year or so that I haven't posted a video. If I had to sum it up into like one main lesson, I guess it would be like, do work that aligns with the work you want to be doing and try not to sidestep as much as possible. And honestly, I hope that's helpful for you. Thanks for watching.